appears that a company in business with Herschel Walker has been using exploited prison labor. This shouldn't be a surprise. Nonetheless, let me give you the details. According to federal court records reviewed by the Associated Press, Walker's food distributor business has gotten a boost through a firm he touts as a principal partner and supplier from unpaid prison labor. So these are prisoners, by the way, that have been arrested as a result mainly of the war on drugs. These are people who have fallen prey to addiction and have went to jail. And so Herschel Walker says, yummy, yummy, we're going to let our friends exploit them. Shocker. Now, lawyers for participants in the program, an Oklahoma-based outfit named Christian Alcoholics and Addicts in Recovery, supposedly you're supposed to help these people, by offering them job training, things like that. Well, no, it turns out they're just working for no wages. In fact, these participants, these lawyers, claim that the program is less of a rehabilitation service for inmates and more of a work camp that profits from vulnerable workforces, and mainly, of course, minorities. Now, look, this is not something that's new. This is not something that, oh my God, we're shocked that this is happening in America, that prison labor is being exploited. No, this is unfortunately a very normal thing that happens. You have prison labor that is underpaid, or unpaid, I should say, overworked, and are put in terrible conditions that are slightly better than prison. And so you might be wondering, okay, so we know this happens already. Why is this news? Well, for one, it should be. Just because someone is a prisoner doesn't mean they should be treated like a slave. Yes, I know, just because it's legal doesn't make it right or moral for these companies to do. And in fact, I would argue that it is immoral. Yes, you may have done a crime, but that doesn't mean that you lose your basic human freedoms, your basic human rights to respect, and that you should be forced to, do slave labor. But now you would also think that Herschel Walker, you'd think that he would understand. Again, he claims to be a good religious man, right? And you think that, he would attempt to maybe contract with companies who pay their workforce fairly and treat them at least decently as a decent human being. But no, apparently not. As the Associated Press details, the Christian Alcoholics and Addicts in Recovery, or CARE, began more than a decade ago sending residents to work at Simmons Food Incorporated, a company that Walker touts as a principal partner and supplier to his distributorship, Renaissance Man Food Services. State judges assigned convicted offenders to CARE, letting them choose between the residential program and traditional incarceration. So now, look, let's be honest, I'm not against the idea of allowing prisoners to choose to work instead of rot behind bars. I actually think that idea of allowing them to work is fine and will actually translate into maybe something better, helping them rehabilitate, get into society. My issue here is the exploitation part. You're exploiting people in prison by not paying them any wages and treating them poorly while they're there. Again, this is working at a chicken plant. Now, Simmons would contract for labor with CARE, whose participants, again, were unpaid. And so not only, again, were they not paid, but they were treated poorly. They were threatened, if their work was unsatisfactory, back to prison. This kind of reminds me of how companies also treat undocumented labor. They go through some of the same kind of treatment, except without being imprisoned. But they're sort of imprisoned by their own circumstances, as they can also be exploited and paid substandard wages. And if they ever complain about wages or working conditions, well then, we're just going to report you to ICE then. We're going to get you deported and possibly killed. But in this case, it's, well, okay, would you rather just go back to prison then? Now, the federal lawsuit pending against CARE and Simmons detailed how some participants were also allegedly pressured to work when they were injured, compelled to attend religious services, and threatened with imprisonment if their work was unsatisfactory. CARE participants also alleged in court that they did not always provide necessary rehabilitative and psychiatric treatment, the kind that they had I guess, promised, they had emphasized. And look, Walker himself was like, oh, yeah, no, you got to get that rehabilitative and psychiatric treatment. Okay, but you're contracting with a company that doesn't provide that. Now, CARE described its services in court filings as a, quote, combination of work therapy and spiritual and religious counseling. Sure, okay, but how are you supposed to go through any of that? You know, talk to professional counselors, get set up with education, advancement opportunities, get some skills training to help you when you're on the outside. How are you supposed to get any of that if you're working full-time in a chicken plant? That's not good skills. Well, of course, that's the point. They can't. They just need bodies there. That's it. Bodies that they can because honestly, you think the average American worker, and this is also why these same kinds of chicken plants, meat producers, end up going with undocumented labor, because the kind of working conditions that they have there, regular American workers would be outraged. So of course they use prison labor, and of course they use undocumented labor. And by the way, it saves these companies tons and tons of money. So now that said, because of how this country treats prisoners, a trial court judge in 2020 had rejected the participants' assertions that CARE had violated federal labor law. Because apparently we don't believe that prisoners have rights in this country. That instead the corporations have all the rights to exploit whoever they want. And in this case, again, people who are incarcerated. It's gross. It's horrifying. Again, the law and society care so little about prisoners. Again, these are people, again, yes, I understand that they have committed a crime. I understand that they're there in order to repay their debt to society. That doesn't mean that they should be allowed to be exploited and used by heartless corporations. Again, and we're not even talking about people who are, murderers and rapists that are doing these work programs. No, we're talking about mainly drug offenders or minorities. So no, again, how does Walker fit into the story specifically? Well, again, the report notes that neither Walker nor Renaissance Man Food Services was named as a defendant in this lawsuit. So let's be fair. However, when you ask Walker, when people have asked Walker about this, his role, well, in his story, Simmons is a very key component of his success. Again, the company that is contracting prison labor. On the Renaissance website, for example, Simmons is the only supplier or partner mentioned by name. RMFS joins with Simmons Food to bring quality products to retail and food service marketplace. By the way, people, let me just address that for a second. You think people that are, forced to work in terrible working conditions, yes, I know they agreed to it, but the other choice is prison. So not much of a choice there. You think they're going to, in these bad working conditions, put out the best quality products? No. And of course, with deregulation that we have, think about it this way. When Republicans talk about deregulation, you know what they found in our food? Hair and feces and sausage. When you think deregulation, think hair and feces in your food, because that's what happens. So you think these prisoners, and I'm not knocking their ability, but again, going back to the working conditions here, you think you're going to be able to put out a healthy quality product that is not filled with hair and feces? Think about it for a second. Maybe they need to be regulated more, and maybe we need to have a higher quality, and no, again, no shame in the prisoners here, but a higher paid, respected workforce to do these things. So, that's it. The website also highlights one of its locations as Siloam Springs, Arkansas, where Simmons is based, and the relationship dates back as early as 2006, according to Walker's previous statements to the media, which again, when Walker makes a statement, you really have to, kind of take it with a grain of salt, because he has said a lot of insane things. Nonetheless, there is documentation here showing this partnership. Renaissance also advertises as a certified minority-owned business, obviously. that works with supplier partners to meet the needs of our retail and food service customers, which suggests a relationship in which Walker partners with food processing firms to act as a distributor so that end-of-line business is buying from a minority-owned firm, right? But a minority-owned firm that is exploiting minorities, that's also not a good thing. CARE, meanwhile, bills itself as a faith-based enterprise. Its programs had launched in 2008 with 6 men, according to its website, and by 2015 housed 203 dorms. Throughout the litigation, Simmons and CARE have defended their practices, but one thing has never been up for dispute, the fact that they do not pay the people in the chicken plant. Participants, they say, perform work without compensation at various nearby work providers, including Simmons. Lawyers wrote in the program's defense, this requirement is no secret. In court filings, the clients, this is, again, a lawyer defending the program, they said that their clients are not employees and that they point out that participants signed documents stipulating that CARE did not offer them a job and that they would not receive wages. Simmons pays CARE for the work performed by CARE participants at a rate well above minimum wage, which again, they don't pay them at all, so that doesn't make any sense. And then added that there were examples of an admission agreement that promises work training at a job site, along with the requirement of working at a designated job site. The documents do not name any prospective companies, explain any jobs, or detail any training. Participants were free to leave the program, the document states, at any time, but such an action could result in consequences from the criminal justice system for early departure. So, on the one hand, they're totally free to leave if they want, but they're going to face consequences, which means prison. So it's work for free or go back to prison, which doesn't really seem like much of a choice, as I said before. In a federal case against another not-for-profit rehabilitation program, Simmons again defended its practices in a 2020 friend of the court brief filed in support of DARP Inc. Citing Simmons' relationship with CARE, Simmons' lawyers wrote that CARE operates in the same basic model as DARP to provide vocational opportunities for those struggling with addiction. Participants work to achieve their own rehabilitation, not for the benefit of DARP or any for-profit firm, the brief states. Further, the lawyers asserted that unpaid laborers receive a benefit beyond money. Oh, God, money, beyond money. Oh, what kind of benefit? Quote, a sense of self-worth and accomplishment. Oh, but see, it's better than money. You get self-worth, everybody. That's what happens. You just get that instead of a paycheck. Really? No, it's exploitation. Pure and simple. And again, this is something that, again, is not unique to Herschel Walker. It just so happens that he's just a newer example of this that has been going on for some time. Look, what we need to do, looking beyond the politics of the issue, is to have a national conversation about corporations, about our carceral system being set up for this kind of abuse that they can use for profit. And again, it's not just corporations, it's governments. California uses prison labor to fight fires. Oftentimes, people that are fighting fires, the prisoners are not given good safety equipment to use. Gee, it's almost as if their lives are devalued because simply they are prisoners. Because they committed a crime, they did something wrong in this society. Again, they're not letting out the serial killers and the rapists to do the jobs. You think they're going to let those people out? No, of course not. It's the low-level drug offenders, the people that were unlucky enough to get addicted to drugs or to be caught possessing them. And by the way, there are, despite Biden's, order to let people out of federal prisons for marijuana specifically, right? Remember, that's just a federal prison. There are state prisons all over the country where you have low-level drug offenders, people that had possession of marijuana that are in prison that are also being exploited by these same so-called work programs. And these are because of draconian laws that are passed. And again, now there's a business set up on this. So now you have people that, again, being exploited for labor, and lawmakers who are, funded by these same corporations are now encouraged to do more tough on crime laws to then allow these corporations to have access to more cheap labor. That's what's going on here. That's the reality of this system. Look, if Walker or anybody else cared about these people, he would ensure that at least his organization would contract with people who, paid a fair wage and allowed these people that he says he's trying to help be rehabilitated, get access to actual rehabilitation, and not just work as a unpaid slave to these corporations.